what's going on in the UK, Pat? Because they're not EU anymore, but I mean, they kind of are sometimes.
Yeah, so I got up, I think Tuesday morning, something like that. I'm supposed to be talking chips on Yahoo Finance on their opening show. And about 5 minutes beforehand, it's like, hey, can you talk about the Google antitrust situation? Always fun. But you know what the easy part, Dan, is we cover antitrust so much that it's like a copy and paste. So essentially, when the UK left the EU, they had to, set up a lot of their own bureaucracy, and one of them is around antitrust. And as we've seen through, Adobe getting shot down with the major acquisition they were making, the UK is trying to flex its muscle and be the top innovator in antitrust regulation. And this time, it's with Google. And the investigation is very similar to other investigations that we've seen around the world, which is the following: that Google uses its monopoly power in search to unfairly limit competition from either competitors to its own applications, which could be advertising in, let's say, restaurants. That could be Google Maps versus, going to an open table or the French version of the open table. And this is very similar in line with the EU's DMA, which says there are gatekeepers. Okay, the UK has a different flavor of it, but it's essentially the DMA. Google has what's called AdWords. I think it's called Google Ads now. Came with an acquisition, Daniel. I think they made in like 2000. Okay, back when I was at Alta Vista, which essentially is the mechanism to bid on advertising. And Google has their own properties. So this will be the debate. It's funny, when I got on, my big quote out of Yahoo Finance was, just ignore this thing, right? I think we've been trained in markets that when's the last time we saw a big ruling come down from any antitrust other than a fine that actually made a difference? So I'm kind of other siding this with, I guess what the EU forced Apple to do on certain things, kicking and screaming. I mean, I don't think that has any material change to their short-term or mid-term business. So yeah, the market yawned and I yawned, and that was the pull quote that Yahoo Finance pulled out.
Yeah, so I love this. Pat, I don't know if you've watched the big catch of the rocket again yesterday, second time with the boosters and Elon, and there's this great visual of the EU. And I know, again, UK is not EU, but a lot of its kind of lagging policies are still of its time as part of the EU and the EC. And it shows a picture of Musk's, SpaceX catching the rocket. And then the next one is a guy with a water bottle and a little cap, and the cap is disconnected. You know how they are now on their water bottles, when you pull them off, you can't actually remove the cap. They kind of like hang, they dangle. And, that's the sort of span of innovation that goes on there. If you actually listen to the Rogan pod with Mark Zuckerberg, Mark actually came out pretty clean for the first time. Again, new Zuck. I don't know who this guy is. This is Red Pill Zuck, I think. It's the Red Pill Zuck.
Yeah, which Zuck?
New Zuck comes out and he's kind of talking about how basically they just stifle innovation and they just fine people. So basically, just so you know, I can get done more quickly with this topic, not because it's not a good one, but because you covered the technical part of it pretty well, is that the US innovates and the EU fines. And that's they basically penalize because they haven't figured out how to enable it. And by the way, maybe they do know how to do it, but they just don't want to do it. And so alternatively, no companies are really being built there of substance. And then meanwhile, when US companies come there, bring their innovation there, they sort of create these tolls. And the tolls are in a version of fines and regulation, and US companies pay it, and it raises money for the EC, and the EC, in this case, in the UK. I mean, look, there's some real fundamental things with Google that need to be looked at, just like the real fundamental things with Apple that need to be looked at. These companies have built these really, really deep the interconnected modes. What I
Concentration is not good for innovation. It's just not.
And the one thing I'll leave this at is that effectively antitrust law needs to be redone. And I've said this and I'll say it and I'll keep saying it, is that the fact is it was originally intended for two things, to increase competition and remove consumer harm. And the fact is in the process of reducing competition, consumers aren't always harmed. Like the consumer experience across the Apple ecosystem or the Google ecosystem or the Microsoft ecosystem is generally a better experience. So you have these completely unified connectors between different parts of the ecosystem, connecting you between devices and locations and experiences, and it's good. And the thing is by actually breaking that up to give people the opportunity to compete in parts, opens all kinds of security vulnerabilities. It opens up more friction in the experiences to get between an app and a device and the security and the payment. So the antitrust rule just suck. They suck because they don't work. If you want people to have great experiences, you actually somewhat are an enabler of anti-competitive situations, because these companies build these moats, and the moats are great experiences. People want that. So nobody cares. It's like, so just keep fighting EU. That'll get you where you want to go eventually. You can raise taxes to 120%. That's the plan. You can tax everybody and then tax them again when they spend the money they don't have.